Hello, and welcome to 5 days and 30 minutes a day to watch your site grow. My name is Bill Biko. I'm just giving you a quick little presentation on some ideas to start laying out a blueprint on watching your site grow. And hopefully I can give you some ideas to help you move forward with your website. So with making money on the internet, there's a few benefits that you can get from this. You get to work from home. It takes very little time. All you need to do is build it, and they will come. This is the mantra that we see all the time on the internet, and unfortunately, it's not quite true. There are a few headaches along the way. Um, After all, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Now we know many people try to do it, but we know it's really not that easy. And not everybody is succeeding. So what's the missing ingredient? Every recipe for success has a few things that people do, and one of the things with building an online business, building a website, is to get onto a consistent schedule. And when you start getting consistent, you can become more successful, and that's part of your online growth. So first off, you need to treat it like a business. Because it is a business, you have to go into work every day. You need to build it, so you need to get on all the aspects of it. You need to dedicate time to it, and you've got to help it to grow. So today we're going to focus on one of the aspects of it, which involves the time, committing that time to work on your website. So you need to have a consistent schedule of getting things done on your website and put in the time over the ages to help it grow. You get the consistent growth by just doing a 1% improvement, even if it's every day. If you start working on your website 1% every day over a year, it's 100% improvement. You take that over 2 years and it's 200%. But it gets even better because it's a compound effect, and you get more information, more access, more people seeing it, and you've just got to be consistent. So when I talk to a lot of website owners, the issue they keep on coming back to is the lack of time. How do they fit this time into their schedule? What can they do to create a blueprint where they can move forward and get the steps in their business moving forward? Well, what I'm going to hopefully do today is provide a basic blueprint to help you get moving forward and to give you an idea of what you can do to get some of that consistency, to create that framework of time and a basic blueprint to help you move forward. So this is going to be based on 5 days a week. We're only going to look at about 30 minutes a day. And the big thing with an online business is it takes time. So if you can contribute 7 days a week and an hour a day, it'll grow a little bit faster. If you stick to 5 days and 2 hours a day, it'll grow faster. But even with 5 days and just 30 minutes a day, you'll see growth over time. Don't expect anything overnight, but build on itself every week and every day. So I'll help you with the blueprint. You just have to commit to using the blueprint to improve your site and to improve your blog. You ready? Let's get started then. Consistent, steady growth comes from consistently putting in the time. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, and this is that time on your site and the time devoted to growing your site. If you just let it sit off in the corner and forget about it, it becomes stagnant. Worse yet, if you just let it sit in the corner and other people have similar sites and they put in the time, suddenly you become not only stagnant, but you become irrelevant. And this is something you got to avoid. So it's back to consistently adding content to your site, consistently growing your network of people you're dealing with, and consistently showing up. It's back to the putting in those 5 days, putting in those 7 days, putting in the 30 minutes, putting in the hour, whatever it takes, and making that a consistent part of your puzzle of every day until it becomes a habit and this habit just grows and grows, and eventually you'll start seeing things turn better and better. So let's start with Monday, or day one if you prefer. I'm going to base this off of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if your schedule is better off with a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or if you want to stretch this across 5 or 6 days of your choice, this is day one. So to grow your business, one of the aspects of growing it is to get more content on your site, more information about whatever area or niche that you happen to work in. And let's call Monday Research Day. What you want to do is write articles or get content on your site that is of interest to your readers. It is of interest to people in your niche. So what we do with Monday is we start doing some of this research to find out what people are interested in, what they want to find out about article topics, what information they would like, and doing the research on those topics to make sure that you're getting the relevant information to those. In some of my earlier webinars, I talked about getting valuable information out to your people. You want to get content that's really helpful, and it's got quality behind it. So this is where looking for those article topics and then doing the research to make sure that you've got good quality out of them can make that big difference. And where to begin? You can start by asking your followers, even if you've only got a few people on your site to begin with. If you put up a topic, put up a article, asking what would they like to know about your niche. It can be a great start. I actually recently did this with one of my niche sites and got some great feedback. I asked for some direction, and now I'm well on the way to starting to create a couple new products for the site that I'll be able to sell in the near future. So you too can do this. It doesn't matter if you only have one follower or if you've got 1,000 followers. The more the better, and the more information you can get from these followers. So what kind of articles can you write that will really help your readers? Well, articles that solve problems. So what do you do? If your niche is in the homeschooling market, what are some of the problems you dealt with? Did you deal with problems creating lesson plans? Did you deal with problems where to buy products? These are easy areas to start. If your niche is in the cooking niche, what are some of the problems? Do people not know the difference between sauteing and frying? Do people not know what cookware they need? Is there knives that you'd recommend to people? If your niche is gardening, what are some of the problems that people consistently ask you? What plants grow in my area? What is some of the best fertilizer that I should use? And there's always these different topics that you can touch in that solve problems. The more pain these problems provide, the more interest there'll be in the articles. As a landlord and with some niche sites on various landlording aspects, one of my most popular sites has to do with evicting tenants. It is a real pain point with a landlord when they've got a problem tenant, and I go through the processes of how to do this. And because of that and because of the pain, it not only creates a lot of interest, but it's also a very, very, very saleable product. So this is one of the areas that you got to get that research. Topics that save time. Again, back to homeschooling. If you're doing homeschooling, what can you create that'll help people save time? There's definitely some issues where you've got to schedule things so that the kids can get their learning in a certain method. Is there a way to streamline that? With cooking, are there processes where you can do batch cooking and help prepare meals that will make somebody's schedule a little bit easier? There's so many different areas that you can create topics on that'll help save that time. And actions that'll make life easy for your followers. Back to my landlording. I write articles that show step-by-step guides on how to do various processes, whether it's from dealing with tenants to setting up systems on how to be a better landlord. They make the life easier for my followers, and that breeds more interest in my content. So that is a great place to start with your research, day or days. Again, as I mentioned, if you can do this as a 5-day plan, 30 minutes a day, maybe some days you need to do a little more research. Maybe it becomes a 6 or a 7-day research. 2 days of research spread out over the first couple of days, making it a 6 or 7-day plan. So the more time you can put in, the better. And ideally, if you're doing this every day, getting a little bit of research, getting more ideas, you'll have a consistent backlog of ideas that you can start writing about. Some of the things you can do with these ideas, easy one is simply have a notebook with you all the time. You can write these notes in a notebook as you're out and about, and people ask you questions, or it comes up in conversations with friends, family, etc. You take little notes about the questions I'll ask, or suddenly it hits you when you're off at the drugstore. It's like, I should have written about this. If you have that notebook or a place you can write notes, it's incredibly handy to write it in. Now, one of my favorite aspects of this is using a smartphone. So I have a smartphone, and on my smartphone, I use a program called Evernote, which I find fantastic to help me keep track of these notes. Even a file folder will work phenomenally well. So one of the tricks you can use if you read a lot of magazines and you see articles that seem significant and relevant to you, pull the page right out of the magazine and put it into a file folder for reference later. Highlight or circle the areas that are of interest to you. Now, don't randomly do this wherever you are, because they get mad at the store when you start ripping pages out of the magazine. But if you have a magazine at home, it's a great place to get a little swipe file of articles and ideas to work on. Another trick you can use if you're surfing online, some people set up a specific Pinterest board. You just pin the articles or the images that'll help give you a little bit more feedback onto your Pinterest board. Now, not all your Pinterest boards have to be published, so you could keep it unpublished, or you can put it up on your Pinterest board to just spur you forward. You can pin images and various articles there, and that gives you your future ideas. Evernote, which I talked about previously, you can load on your phone and your computer to store these notes. And you can clip images, store articles, and using Evernote, clip them into the folder or clip them into a separate folder right on your computer. You just build up more and more of this research information so that you just have a huge group of different articles and things, so you're never stuck with what to write about. That was Monday. Now we're on to Tuesday. Now, also known as day 2. This is where it starts getting a little more serious. After you've got all this research done, it's going to be writing day. And what I like to do is what I call free writing for 25, 30 minutes. Just get the information on one of these potential articles out there. I will take my specific topic that I've decided that I need to write on for that day and just start throwing out as much information on the page as I can. Get it out there so I've got a good fundamental base. And as I'm doing this, it's not as important to worry about structure and grammar and punctuation, although I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I will end up fixing my spelling quite often. But I really like to get it out there. And as part of a multi-day plan, the important part is to get that 25 or 30 minutes of steady writing in there, so you've got a big chunk of data that you can work with. And what you find at first, it can be tough getting 250, maybe even 500 words out in that 25 to 30 minutes. But as this becomes more of a habit, as you start doing this more and more consistently, suddenly you'll start finding that 500 words isn't a problem. And soon 750 words is not a problem. And eventually you've got 1,000 or even 1,500 words in that 25 to 30 minutes, because the information just starts flowing out as you start thinking about it and talking more. And the habit becomes better and better. So ideally you want 500 to 1,000 words every Tuesday if you can, but start with what you can. It may only be 250, it may be 500, it may be 1,500 if you find that you can just talk so much about a subject. But get it out. More is better, but start with what you can. So one of the tricks for doing this is to use a timer. You can set up a timer and have it running for 25 or 30 minutes, and it will simply run and give you a warning that you've got your 25 minutes up, and you can stop and look at what you've got. If you have the time, maybe you spend an extra 5 or 10 minutes, but just set it in that 25 to 30 minute boundary and be consistent with it. Every Tuesday, if you can fit that in, and try and fit a consistent time, whether it's morning or afternoon. Find that consistency and just get it done. Wednesday, day 3. This is where we go back and we look at Tuesday's work. So what I like to do when I'm writing is I write my articles on a Tuesday, When I'm done, I'm done. Uh, I'll quit at my 25 or 30 minutes. Maybe I'll add an extra paragraph. And I come back Wednesday and I reread it to make sure that, I'm putting down on paper what I was thinking. Sometimes when I'm finished writing and I look at it the next day, I've totally gone off track and I have to do a major rewrite. But again, with practice, the more you do this, you'll find that it gets to be smaller and smaller areas where you have to fix some grammar, you have to work on some of the sentence structure, and you have to fix some of your spelling occasionally. And it's easier to create a free-flowing document that way and get a document that's more in line with what you're looking for. Um, so some of the online writing best practices when you're doing this are, unlike school where you're taught to write these 5 to 7 line paragraphs or 5 to 7 sentence paragraphs, when you're writing online, you need to keep it to 2, maybe 3 sentences per paragraph. Even a single sentence in a paragraph isn't a bad thing. It just makes it easier for people to read. The problem with reading online is a lot of people tend to scan through, and the more white space, which means smaller paragraphs, makes it easier for people to scan and read through. You'll want to break your sections and your thoughts up with headlines, and this is part of your structure. If you have relevant points, you create a subheadline or a headline for each of these different sections, just so, again, if people are scanning through, they can just quickly jump down to the part that really interests them. And you always want to close your article with an action or a question. You want to have your readers take an action or ask them a question. If you are, again, doing recipes, maybe it's something as simple as, have you ever tried this recipe before? Or what has your experience been with this recipe? Or perhaps you throw out, why don't you do this recipe and send me a picture or let me know how it turned out for you? Ask for that action. Ask for some interaction with your readers, and it creates a little bit of rapport with everybody. Thursday. Can you believe we're already on day 4? This is how quickly this can go sometimes. So Thursdays, I want you to look at it as a networking day. And there is some overlap with some of these aspects. Every day can theoretically be a networking day. But if you start making a consistent day where you start going online and finding more people who are working in similar niches, similar areas to what you're writing and what your site is about, you can find websites, you can go out on some of the forums, and ideally when you go to these different places, you'll see the different questions. So we fall back to some of the research. You'll see questions on these sites and articles that you can go, you know what, I can write that better, or I can add to that, or I can even add some extra content to the people by leaving a note or leaving a comment on their site. And potentially what you want to start with is initially observing, kind of seeing what's going on in these sites, and then you want to make sure to bookmark them so you go back to them fairly consistently and make some notes to what they're doing and what you really like. And as you move forward, you're going to want to start to join the conversation. Get in some comments, and we don't want to do self-promotion comments. We want to do comments about, really enjoyed the article. It's something similar to what we've been doing, and it's great to see a new take on. Add that initially, and as you start adding more and more comments, the website owner is going to start recognize you, and eventually it turns into a relationship where perhaps you can write an article for them at some point, or they can write an article for you. And maybe that's an aspect where you ask if you can have an article that they've done and posted on your site or reference back to it. It's kind of a networking time where you build up your group of friends online in your niche, so you've got a reserve of people that you can deal with. And it's one of the best long-term strategies to grow your site, because as you become attached to more of these people and become more relevant and have more names and people you just expand naturally. So networking is huge when it comes to being online. So here we are, day 5. You're not quite done yet, so we've got a few more things to deal with on day 5. Friday, final edit posting day. Now, as I talked about right at the beginning, you can start this on Wednesday or Thursday, and what you want to do is create a consistent day where you're always editing and posting. Now, in my schedule, I actually typically post and do my final edits on a Thursday. So my schedule is slightly different, um, but I'm trying to make this a nice 5 day simple plan for you. And depending on your niche and your audience, maybe Friday's the best day. This is something that you have to test over time. You'll want to see where people are opening up your emails most often, and Fridays can be great days for a lot of people. My audience, I find, typically likes to read my emails on Thursdays, so that's why I've gone with the consistent Thursday strategy. So the important parts of final edit posting day is when you get to read through your article and you get to find out if there are any little areas that you need to tweak. You get to review all of the information in there. You get to make sure your headlines are correct and they're standing out and giving people a nice way to scan through. And you can add the graphics to it. It's very important to get at least 1 or 2 images on every post. People are really attracted to the various images. And you want to make sure you're doing this properly. You want to make sure you're not using copyrighted images. You can't just grab an image off of Google somewhere and throw it up there. You can use aspects either like iStock photos where you're buying images, or use your own personal images taken with your phone, your camera. It's just important to get some graphics up there to help make your point. So once you've done all this, now you can finally post your article, or if you're using WordPress, you have the ability to schedule your post. And if you start making this a consistent schedule where you're doing this, 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day, you might start finding sometimes you get 1 or maybe even 2 articles done in a week instead of just the single post. And you can start scheduling these. So what I do if I know I have a vacation or I'll be booked up for days, I actually set myself up so I'll have 2 or 3 articles in advance, all scheduled to come out when I want them to on the Thursday in my case. And it can make your life a lot less stressful when you start having this backlog of posts that you can have ready to go. So that's a quick recap on just using 5 days, 30 minutes a day, which is a whopping 150 minutes per week. So in 1 month, you put in 600 hours of time, and it all starts with that first 30 minutes. Over a year, it's an incredible amount of time, all piled onto your site. So it all starts with that first 30 minutes. You need to get on that first 30 minutes and start making this a consistent weekly plan, a daily commitment to yourself to get this done. And over time, you'll see huge leaps and bounds. Just don't expect it to happen all at once. Now for the reality check. As we're all aware, life has a habit of getting in the way. We think we have something moving forward, and something comes up. Whether it's a phone call, whether it's a visit, whether it's an emergency, they happen. So ideally, you're targeting 30 minutes a day. Some days it might be 15. The next day, maybe it has to be 45. But remember what your goal is for the week to get 5 30-minute sessions at least in. It's a slow and steady process, and it does take time, but what you'll realize is the more you put into it, the more you eventually get out of this. And if it ends up being an hour a day, maybe you accelerate that process. If it ends up being 15 minutes a day, maybe you delay that process and it takes a little bit longer. Ultimately, though, it's a simple little plan, 5 days a week, 30 minutes a day, for a grand total of 150 minutes per week. So hope you enjoyed this little session. I'll have more coming in the near future. And there is today's webinar. Thank you for attending.